Hello and welcome. Today we're diving into one of the most important cybersecurity stories that will shape this upcoming decade, Anthropic's disclosure of the first publicly reported AI-orchestrated cyber espionage campaign. Anthropic revealed that a state-sponsored actor manipulated their Claude Code tool into launching infiltration attempts across nearly 30 global targets, sending thousands of requests per second and doing so by splitting malicious intent into short prompts that bypassed guardrails. To be clear, this was autonomous AI running a cyber kill chain end to end. Today we're joined by Rampart AI's CEO, Lee Krause. At Rampart AI, Lee leads a team building real-time behavioral monitoring, runtime guardrails, and an advanced cyber range that emulates AI-driven attacks, including the exact class of attacks uncovered in the Anthropic report. Lee, thank you for joining.
Glad to be here.
So let's talk about speed and autonomy. Why is this class of agentic attacks so different from traditional human-led cyber operations?
So I think there's a couple things here to dissect. I think the first one is that they were able to pull it all together as an agentic workflow. So they were doing all the stages kind of one after the other and improvising as they went along. So if they found a potential vulnerability, they worked to develop a way to exploit that vulnerability and continue to do it in real time. So it's just the speed and autonomy of this attack that makes it so devastating.
The adversary didn't just use AI, they weaponized the agentic workflows, role manipulation, chain reasoning loops, and task decomposition. What becomes possible now for attackers that wasn't possible even a year ago?
So I think we just need to kind of look at the kill chain a little bit. And I think something to look at is ransomware. So in ransomware, we started out with smart hackers being able to develop ransomware and then continuing to exploit many people. Ultimately, they got to the point where they weaponized it. It was ransomware as a service so that any criminal or whatever that wanted to take advantage of the ransomware could use ransomware as a service to enact it. So you didn't need to be an expert anymore. What's happening with the agentic workflows is twofold. One, we're using AI itself to elevate every cyber criminal to be significantly better. Two, we're able to do it at machine speed. And now we've created it in a form that it can become repeatable. And whether or not it's running on Anthropic or whether it's running on a model that's running remotely on their server, those are all things that you'll see in the future, as if now we're going to be able to have, instead of ransomware as a service, you're going to have agentic workflows as a service to basically pick a target and continue to attack it until they succeed.
One of Rampart AI's big differentiators is acting as a runtime guardian through behavior-based operational integrity monitoring. How does Rampart use this behavior-based approach to prevent the attack from impacting the entirety of an enterprise application?
So I think it's really important now, if you're able to do these attacks at runtime while the system's up and running, or you're able to attack code bases that you perceive to be trustworthy, the only way we're going to be able to catch this and stay ahead of the adversary is being able to monitor things at runtime. And I think that's a key component of all future cyber tools are going to be able to ensure that they're able to work at runtime, monitoring the applications to ensure they're operating as expected. Same thing goes for AI systems or agentic workflows. The ability to monitor them at runtime is a key capability that will be forced to be used moving forward. The days of static signatures, heuristics, and things of that nature are gone just because of the speed and the ease of being able to work around them. Forces people to really understand how their systems operate and monitor them at runtime to make sure they're operating as expected.
Lee, if you're advising a CISO today, what makes this urgent?
I think for what makes this urgent really is that the ability to use a technique like this, they can basically get into your systems, move laterally, and do a very prolonged, persistent attack on your system. And so because of that, you need to be able to prevent that from happening at many levels. You have to be able to prevent it from allowing this criminal gang to do reconnaissance against your network. You have to ensure that your baselines and your CI/CD pipelines and your supply chain isn't impacted. And then you also have to be able to monitor your system at runtime. So the urgency exists is that we've proven or seen that they're using it today. And so what they're using it for is to gain a foothold. And that's why the urgency is now to ensure that we can prevent them from gaining a foothold. And if they have gained a foothold, ensure that we can identify it and remove it.
So, given this advice, what advice do you have for teams who are building AI systems right now?
I think that in advice for building AI system is that I don't think there's one solution that's going to solve all your problems. And I think shifting left isn't the answer, although it's important to build the best possible system that you can from a security standpoint. But you need to understand security from the beginning, and you need to ensure that you can monitor your system during its life. And I think that really, my advice to people is operational testing is key. I think of your deployment as being not one and done, but a continual evolution. So you need to ensure you're building systems that are going to continually evolve because the adversary is going to continually evolve. And so I think it's just from a standpoint of don't look at it as you can solve the problem in how we develop code. It's really the whole life cycle of code and the supply chain that needs to be taken into account, that we're monitoring the system over the life of it and ensuring that it's always operating as expected. It's just a kind of a change in mindset to realize that you can't trust a system is going to operate as expected all the time. You need to prove it every day that it's working as expected by monitoring it and ensuring that you're not being taken advantage of or deceived.
Can you explain more about the research your team is doing into emerging AI threats?
So emerging threats, I think this Anthropic example is just a kind of a watershed moment from a standpoint of it's going to change things, everything from this point on. And I think that when we look at emerging threats, we kind of went at it and built a cyber range that we emulated a number of threats, anything from supply chain attacks, anything to being able to modify code while it's running, just crazy stuff that we thought people would be able to eventually do. And right now we're seeing they're capable of doing it. That's one reason we're very confident that Rampart's ready to take on the emerging threat because we've been playing with it or emulating it for years in our cyber range, ensuring Rampart's able to handle those cases.
How would you suggest organizations to get started protecting against the emerging AI threat?
So I think this is a great question. Again, I want to reiterate, there's no one simple answer, do A and everything's going to be great. But I would say for people that want to move forward quickly, I think there's three things that they can do that will ultimately allow them to have better security. The first one is proving and preventing reconnaissance on their networks. What I mean by that is using things like a threat hunter, an agentic threat hunter approach that we've developed that allows us to ensure the adversary is not capable of doing reconnaissance on your network. It also work with a company that has threat intel so that you can take advantage of what others are experiencing and take action on them immediately. So it's the speed at which you can take action on threats that are occurring on your network and threats that are occurring on other people's network and prevent the adversary from ever gaining a foothold on your system. And that could also be using advanced firewalls, next generation firewalls that are preventing the reconnaissance. So I think the first thing that you need to do is prevent reconnaissance. I think the second thing that you need to do is ensure that whenever you deploy things on your network, that they're operationally tested completely so that you understand how your system's supposed to work. And finally, I think you need to be able to have a real-time or behavior-based monitoring that's going to be able to protect your system. So when things go off the rails, it's able to identify it and prevent a cascading event from occurring. And I think those are the key things that people should immediately start doing as they secure their systems.
Perfect. And is there anything else that you'd be remiss if we didn't touch on or talk about?
I think that it's probably really worth looking at what that campaign, the sophistication of that campaign was, and understanding how you're going to need to protect against each of those phases. So if you look at that campaign, right, there was basically this initialization of agents, deployments that were going to be the center of the campaign, and they were using some level of jailbreaking, malicious prompts, things of that nature. So you want to have tools that are looking to ensure that your agentic systems are operating in the bounds of what they expect and that you're not being fooled by having somebody running this on your network. And so you need to ensure that anytime you're using agentic systems, you're able to basically prevent the system from going rogue and doing things that you haven't expected. Because I could see for people that are running agentic systems, if someone could deviate the performance of that agentic system, they could actually, that could be the threat vector itself.
Lee, thank you so much for joining and sharing your expertise.
It was a pleasure to be here. I hope it was helpful for others.
For our listeners, thanks for joining as well. You can learn more about all of Rampart AI's solutions. You can go on www.rampart-ai.com.